Good morning, everybody. We're back here with you on a Monday morning with the Pentecast podcast, trying to start off your week on a great note.
There's nothing like a good cup of joe.
That's right.
Folks, welcome to another episode of the Pentecast podcast. My name is Andrew Bella. Alongside me, as always, my good friend Ryan Sellers. I am excited about this episode because what we're going to do is somewhat of a recap of kind of what we've been doing on the podcast. And I just got back in town. I've been away doing some stuff on behalf of the podcast and took a little time off. Ryan has been back here holding the fort down, and definitely glad of that. And Ryan, good to see you, man.
It's good to be here. It's been a little while since we sat down and recorded.
Have you missed it?
Oh, yeah.
I sure have, too.
Yeah.
I really have. I've been looking forward to this. And to the viewers, we'll kind of let you in on the reason why me and Ryan are having such a grand reunion right now. When we did audio only, we were able to upload it the next day, minimal editing. Now with video, it's a totally different
beast.
Yeah, it's a totally different animal. And so I've found myself many, many mornings at 1 o'clock, 1:30 in the morning editing these videos.
Yeah.
In matter of fact, it was about 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the morning one time, and I said to myself, never, ever again. No. So ever since then, Ryan and I have recorded a week or two ahead. And so with that said, a lot has happened since you and I have sat down and talked to one another. So this is going to be a recap of everything that we've been able to accomplish, because I don't want what has happened the past several weeks to go unnoticed. And I know it hasn't, but I think it's really good to reflect on what has been accomplished.
It's good for us to reflect.
For sure.
We stay busy, hopping day to day. And then, like what we're doing right here on this episode, stopping, reflecting. Youth camp was 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago by the time this airs.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's really the last time you and I sat down together.
Yeah, and that was such a crazy week in itself.
Yeah, for sure.
Youth camp, on top of trying to get as many episodes as we could recorded. One of those episodes was last week. Brother Jonathan Prickett came on, and he talked about common sense Christianity, and I thought he did outstanding. He's just a good guy to be around.
Yes.
And I hate to brag on him too much.
I know it.
I was on the Pod and Me podcast when I was out in Oklahoma, and we're going to get to all of this. And they asked me, my cousin Devin asked me, what is it about podcasting that you like the most? And this is exactly what I told him, Ryan. I said, what I like about it the most is the uniqueness in each episode. Every episode is unique. Every episode is completely different. Yeah. You and I, for a year and a half now, have sat down and talked to one another. Each individual episode is totally different. Yeah. And then when we have people come on and give their stories and their testimonies, people, most of them, which we knew or thought we knew, they usually drop these little stories in their testimony that you say, man, I never knew that about them. So would you agree with that, the uniqueness of each episode?
Oh, totally. Yeah, I definitely agree. That each and every, to your point, even when it's just me and you, every episode's different. And then when you bring someone else in, like a Heather Cooney, all I knew before we sat down was her name. Yeah. That's it. And then to see all of that come out in an hour-long episode was incredible.
And she's the one that I was going to bring up, so keep going.
Yeah. I mean, just like I said, it was we knew her name before we sat down. And then as she's telling this testimony, I'm putting it together in my brain. I didn't know that her husband, Matt, had passed away until she said it.
Okay.
And, I'm figuring it out before she actually comes out and says
just like somebody who watched the video.
Exactly. And I'm just overwhelmed, as you could tell, crying like a baby.
And I didn't cut you any slack. I didn't edit any of it out because I want people to see the reaction.
Absolutely.
I want them to see the raw thing.
That's right. No regrets. No.
And the way we ended it, we love you over and under. I thought that was great.
That's right. And that episode is still feeding me for sure, and just
many others.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's up to 2,700 views, I think.
Yeah, over now.
Yeah,
and I'm not on the numbers. When I started this podcast,
no,
and I mentioned this to you when you came on. It's not about the numbers. It's not about me and you. This isn't the Andrew and Ryan show. We put the cameras up and put this audio up. So if somebody wants to listen to these conversations or somebody wants to be blessed by this, that's their business. We encourage everybody to listen.
Yeah.
But with numbers, it shows you how impactful her testimony was.
That's right. And I've watched almost every day since that episode came out. I've watched, the comments and the numbers grow, and it's just incredible because I know every view is another life that's touched by Heather Cooney's testimony.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the comments because I actually screenshotted one that I'm going to share from a Bethany Meadows.
Okay.
Don't know her, never met her in my life, but this is the power of the podcast, okay? If you guys want to know what this podcast has been about from day number one, just go watch Heather Cooney's episode. Absolutely. That's all you have to do.
That's it.
From day number one, that has been the goal. That has been the mindset from day number one. And when it grows, we can start doing amazing things for the community. And so with us applying for the 501c3, getting everything set up, it's a job. It's been a job, but it has been so rewarding. And matter of fact, the influx of calls and texts and all of that has just been, it's been humbling, honestly. Yeah. So speaking of the comments, this comment, I screenshotted it because I wanted to share it. So I guess this is public records. I can share what's on my YouTube, I guess. I'm not going to get sued, I hope. It's not going to have much to get, I can promise you that. It's from a Bethany Meadows. It says this: I appreciate hearing Sister Heather's story. I remember last year when her husband passed. I heard bits of her story on Facebook. I told my husband at the time I didn't know how on earth someone could handle what she had gone through. Little did I know that 3 months later, I would face a similar situation. My husband passed away in November of 2020. I found myself a widow at 28. It has been so hard, but as Sister Heather said, God is faithful. When you are faced with a situation that you thought you could never go through, God will give you the grace to do it. Thanks for sharing her story.
Wow.
And I want to say thank you, Bethany Meadows, for sharing your testimony on our comments. This is not the Andrew and Ryan show.
No.
We want to give you all across the world who have amazing testimonies a platform that you can share them with us and bear each other's burdens. The way we saw people rally around Heather was amazing. And I never heard her story, never knew it, but she's never going to be the same person in my eyes.
No.
When I see her, I'm going to see this story.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like I said, all I knew when we sat down was her name. I didn't know her story. Since then, I feasted off of that episode. I've gone on, I found her in my friend suggestion on Facebook. So guess what? I've requested your friendship, Heather Cooney. And I went in, I scrolled her page and found his memorial video for the service, and I watched it, and man, jam up. Had some wonderful singing, and even some messages, some excerpts from some messages that he had done. Wonderful. And all I could think of her voice, him being that larger-than-life personality, and you could see that.
It was depicted in his memorial service.
It was beautiful.
That's wonderful. I'm really glad that you went on there and found that, because it's just a connection with people.
Oh, yeah.
We talk about Brother Fred Smith like everybody in the world knows him, but they don't know him like we did. And if we could share each other's stories, if we could tap into people's lives, Ryan, more than what we're doing right now. How many times have we heard this on our episodes? I went to church with them my whole life, and I never knew that about them. It's all over the place. It's all over the world. And until we stop what we're doing and start tapping into people's lives, the stories are dying with the people.
That's right.
And so we want to capture it as much as we can.
And what it does, it reminds everyone else, hey, so-and-so's been through this before. And if they made it, I can make it because I'm
Exactly.
serving the same God, and God never changes.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to be reminded of. How often have you and I, going through something in life, you think about someone who's blazed the trail before you. Somebody's been here before.
Yep.
And you say, man, if they did it, I can do it.
Exactly. And it's just like the Bethany Meadows comment.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, she heard bits and pieces of her story. That's terrible. She's talking to her husband about it. That's awful. I don't know how she could do that. God knew in 3 months she was going to be faced with the same exact thing.
Sure.
Did we know that? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
And so we live in a society that promotes self. We live in a generation that could care less about one another. Taking into consideration, if we're living in a selfish generation, if we're living in a me-first society, that doesn't mean that the church has that luxury, Ryan. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean that we have that luxury. Mm-mm. And I'll tell you, you don't know how blessed you will be until you stop and start tapping into others' lives. And you'll realize there's a bunch of folks around me that are going to help me.
Yeah.
For
sure.
And so Heather Cooney's episode obviously was outstanding, and it's still going to continue. It's not getting off the air. No. It's going to continue to bless people. And so we thank Brother Jonathan Prickett for coming on and doing an episode with us. It was late that night, but he was a trooper. We got him some coffee.
Yep.
And also,
great conversation.
Absolutely. Just down-to-earth guy. Something that you don't see in most preachers outside of the pulpit, who's willing to let you in and say, hey, look, I'll be transparent with you. Mm-hmm. And so I really appreciate that. And then also, just the icing on the cake was meeting Heather, the way the testimony went. A big shout-out to Brother Andrew Parker for orchestrating that.
Yeah.
And, I'm so thankful for how that worked out. And so with that said, the night after youth camp was over, I headed to Oklahoma, drove straight through, and you and I haven't been together since. Mm-hmm. And so I was on the first world tour of the podcast by myself.
Yep.
I was the cameraman, the video, what would you call that? The videographer, and I was the audio guy. I was everything. I was the makeup man. Just kidding. I was everything. And so I was breaking down this equipment, putting it back together. But we want to give you a buffer of what to expect the next 3 weeks. I was not on vacation the first several days when I left Georgia. I went to Oklahoma and started recording testimonies for Crosslight Ministries. And Ryan, I'm not going to give anything away. Because I really want everybody who is watching this video, everybody who is listening to this podcast, I want you to take the time out of your lives and watch each individual testimony that we recorded. So I wasn't goofing off, obviously, in Oklahoma like I do most of the time while I'm here in Georgia. And so I didn't want to just throw these testimonies and these videos that I recorded out without giving people a buffer to understand what we've done. So with the help of Crosslight Ministries, of course, you know that they're near and dear to my heart.
Of course.
Brother Lyndall and Sister Cindy Birdsong. Ryan, the guy hijacked my cameras and my equipment.
Did he?
Dude, he's a natural. He took over, and matter of fact, I think in one episode he just opened the thing up and was like, welcome to the Pentecast podcast.
Well, look at there.
Yeah, and so, I mean, I had to pull him to the side and say, look, man, if you want...
We're not putting him on payroll.
If you want this seat... Well, they actually said that in one of the episodes. Sister Cindy, she goes, is Ryan getting paid this week? And I said, no, he's not, and neither am I.
That's right.
And so we set up at Crosslight Ministries. If you go back and listen to the episode that I did with Brother Lyndall and Sister Cindy down in Florida, they talk about how somebody sent them a sign that says a place for strangers. Mm-hmm. So it's right in the background of a lot of the testimonies that we did. And so we sat right up there in their lobby. They got a gorgeous church. I was there. I preached for them Sunday morning. It's a mission field. It's not your average church. They are busing in homeless people. Ryan, it's incredible. It's an incredible ministry that they're doing. And let me tell you, they're impacting the community. There's people with problems. There's people that are hurting. there's a bunch of hurting folks out there that need a refuge. They need a place. And you know what? Sometimes they don't feel, like they even fit in. We don't understand them. And matter of fact, there's a lot of things in my past that I would tell you wouldn't understand, as far as being a drug addict and all those things. And so they need a place of refuge. They need a place of hope. And they have done a tremendous job of building a culture there that is so invitational. It is a breath of fresh air. It really is. And so you see people that are hungry for God there. So I was there Sunday, and then I actually was able to go preach for my cousin at New Mission Sunday night, and that was a treat as well. And then, of course, I was on the Pod and Me podcast with Brother Dustin Wakely. Brother Brad was faking an illness, so he didn't have to meet me and be a part of my episode for whatever reason.
Sure.
He just couldn't handle the heat. And then Brother Devin was there. So I was in the lion's den by myself.
I forgive you.
And so I was like, man, this is what it's like to be with the enemy.
Yeah.
That's
right.
But no, they're doing a great job. The episodes that are going to air are Monday, July 26th, a week from today. Brother Daryl Hill is going to start it off. His testimony is incredible. Prison, on drugs, thief, a liar, robber, homeless. God's restored him, and he is one of the most exciting Christians you will ever meet in your life. And I'm telling you, if you want to be blessed and you want to actually see what Crosslight is all about, you need to check out Daryl Hill's episode, Monday, July 26th. The following day is Brother Jim Taylor. That is Tuesday, July 27th. His testimony, he is an Andrew, Ryan. The disciple we talked about. He's behind the scenes. He's working. He is so consistent. But little does anybody know the reason why he has such a passion for these homeless folks and these drug addicts and these folks that are they're in terrible situations. He actually was homeless at one time in his life. And you look at him and his story, you would never, ever guess that. But there again, tapping into people's lives and realizing, hey, you know what? They've got amazing stories. And then to top off that week, on Wednesday, July 28th, is the testimony and the story of Dusty and Laura Strait. And they are amazing. They're great people. And Dusty, ironically, I'm not going to give all these testimonies away, but Dusty, for drugs, used to pull copper out of houses illegally. And he said in his episode, he's like, doesn't God have a sense of humor? He said, now that I'm saved, I'm working for an electrician, putting copper back into houses. And so I thought that was really neat, you know. But he has an incredible story. God has been so good to him. Another one is going to air August 2nd. It is Sister Melinda Grounds. I met her for the very first time. A lot of these people I had heard of or met briefly, but she is one that I never met. And she has an incredible story. I've told everybody about her story because when you look at her, you're like, there's no way that she did what she did because God's restored her. So be looking for that on August 2nd. That's going to be Melinda Grounds' episode. And then to top off everything for the Crosslight crew, back in the early summer when I went to Florida, I interviewed Brother Lyndall and Sister Cindy. And I wanted it to be strictly about Crosslight, what they're doing. And they actually really wanted to do an interview about me. And so I've already have 2 episodes of where I give my exhausted testimony, you as well. Mm-hmm. And I was like, listen, guys, they don't want to hear about me. They want to hear about Crosslight. You guys are way more interesting than me. And so for that hour, we just talked about what God's doing there. And people really, really enjoyed that episode. But I had to promise them because they would do it on one condition. They said, when you come home or come to our house next time, we're interviewing you. And so my aunt actually hijacked the podcast that day, and we sit down. And actually there are several details of my testimony that I haven't gave until when I sat down with them. It's a pretty emotional thing for me to watch. I watched it one time, having to edit it, but I lived it, so be blessed on that. But that episode I titled it Bella Meets Birdsong because that was the Bella boot camp or the Birdsong boot camp, basically. And then to top off the entire trip to Oklahoma, I interviewed my cousin, Brother Devin Birdsong, and that's going to air on August 9th. Cool. And he was gracious to come on. We see him on the podcast. He's doing a great job. He and I are really good friends now, not only my cousin, but he's a friend of mine, and I really appreciate what he's doing. So we have a lot of things in store for everybody who's viewing these videos, everybody that's listening. We want you to know that we're moving forward. There's things that are happening. And honestly, I'm not saying this to like tickle anybody's ears or make me feel better. I am truly thankful for how fast this thing has progressed.
Oh, yeah.
I'm truly thankful that it's blessing people and that it's helping people. If the Heather Cooney episode or the Jonathan Prickett episode or the April Gay testimony or the Gary Johnson testimony or the Neil Bridges and yada, 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 all of them, if they helped one person, which I know they've helped more, if they've helped one person, I'm okay with that.
Absolutely.
I'm okay with that. And so on another note, I have got an influx of emails, text messages, a lot of phone calls on what we're doing. It's kind of a mystery to some, like, hey, kind of fill me in on what this is. This is turning into a ministry. Well, it really isn't turning into a ministry. It's always been a ministry. However,
it's just gaining traction.
Yeah, it's taking time to grow.
Yeah.
And so with that said, after Heather Cooney's episode, Ryan and I, we never discussed what you saw on that video. We never discussed not one time to give her money or anything. God put it on my heart, but he and I have been talking the whole time about when this is going to take off and what we've wanted to do. The whole plan from day one was to bless other people financially, with their stories, any way that we could help, and do some amazing things and give the listener and the viewer a tangible experience on what the ministry is about.
Yes.
You know, not just sending your money overseas to mission work. And I'm totally for that. I really am.
Yeah.
But if you look at our backyard, we're in a total mess as well. Mm-hmm. And so Heather Cooney was in my backyard.
Yeah.
And I tapped into her life. And the children of God, the family of God, this is what kills me in a good way. When they heard her testimony, they rallied behind her, Ryan.
Absolutely.
And I started getting texts and phone calls and saying, give me her information. How do we help her? And to me, that's what the podcast has always been about. So if you're in question, what is the Pentecast podcast about? It's not about Andrew. It's not about Ryan. It's about sharing each other's testimonies and trying to help somebody along the way. And so I've had several people ask me, how do we get involved? How do we do our part? And if you want any extra information on donations or whatever you would like to do, whatever God's putting on your heart, you can email me at andrew@pentecastpodcast.com, and I can give you more details or more information on what we're doing behind the scenes, and you can be a part of that. And so we have a Patreon account, and they were supporting us from day number one. And I appreciate all of the patrons. A lot of this wouldn't even be possible if it wasn't for them. Mm-hmm. And so I'm so excited for what the future holds. I really am. I'm excited to hear more stories. I'm excited to see what God's going to do in not only our lives, but the lives of others. And I'm excited to hear more stories.
Did you forget about the building, Andrew?
I did. I forgot about the building. Ryan, the building is in production. We have been working tirelessly trying to get it done for you folks so you can stare at this big old deer behind me in a much more studio setting. We're going to miss the drapes, Ryan.
Yeah.
We're going to miss everything about this place, but I'm ready for the studio.
Me too.
I can't wait.
Too.
Stay tuned for what God's doing here on the podcast. Listen to an episode that you may have missed and share it with somebody who needs to hear the good news.
Amen. We love you. Have a great week. Over and under.